Less than halfway through his first term, President Obama is past the doorstep and halfway over the threshold to getting confirmed his second nominee to the United States Supreme Court. Earlier today, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted 13-6 to send Elena Kagan's nomination to the full Senate. Pretty much everyone agrees she will be confirmed, probably sometime next month, despite some particularly condescending remarks today to Elena Kagan, to the Solicitor General and former Harvard Law School dean, from failed judicial nominee and now Republican Senator Jeff Sessions.
When President nominated Elena Kagan, I expressed my concern with her lack of experience. Not simply a lack of judicial experience, but a lack of a robust legal experience. Ms. Kagan does not have that kind of experience. She just does not.
Again, Solicitor General, former dean of Harvard Law School. But never mind. Nobody really cares what Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III is complaining about in Elena Kagan's resume at this point, because everyone essentially concedes that she is on her way to being confirmed. Broad agreement about the likelihood of Kagan's confirmation is, though, having a fascinating effect on the far right wing, which wanted Elena Kagan's nomination to be a fight to the political death, and which now has but a short, desperate time to make its short, desperate case against her. This is what that short, desperate case looks like. Yes, that is what you think it is. It's Elena Kagan, centrist judicial nominee, Solicitor General of the United States, and incidentally, Orthodox Jew, caricatured as a Muslim man wearing a turban. You stay classy, Washington Times. This is actually the second time that the conservative newspaper, the Washington Times, has run a picture of Elena Kagan in a turban. They've done so twice now. Yep, there it is again. Both times alongside columns lambasting Elena Kagan by a man named Frank Gaffney. Mr. Gaffney has decided that Elena Kagan is part of a secret conspiracy to impose Sharia law on the United States. You know, like all the Jews want. The Washington Times has actually run two versions of Frank Gaffney's Elena Kagan is part of a secret plot to impose Sharia law columns. Both times they illustrated those columns with Elena Kagan in a turban. If the name Frank Gaffney is ringing a bell for you, it's because he's made a little bit of a name for himself constructing all kinds of awesome conspiracy theories, many of which involve logos and secret symbolism and Muslims. It's like the Da Vinci Code, even more fake. When President Obama gave a little nod to the Saudi king last year, Frank Gaffney was there to expose the true meaning behind the otherwise totally standard gesture of respect.
When he uses the word respect in the context of a waist bow to the King of Saudi Arabia, for example, and talks about respectful language, which is code for those who adhere to Sharia, that we will submit to Sharia. I'm telling you the code is they receive it in the Taliban headquarters and in Al-Qaeda's caves and in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
You know, if Frank Gaffney knows so much about Taliban HQ and the Al-Qaeda caves, he maybe should tell the United States military. Mr. Gaffney, I'm sure, is far too busy for that because there is Muslim infiltration to be ferreted out. He was also the guy behind the missile defense secret Muslim thing, too. Remember that? This used to be the logo for the Missile Defense Agency, an agency within the Department of Defense. When the old Missile Defense logo was updated to this new logo, that caused Frank Gaffney to lose his ever-loving mind. He said, quote, "The new Missile Defense Agency shield appears ominously to reflect a morphing of the Islamic crescent and star with the Obama campaign logo." See, a conspiracy. The old logo under the Bush administration was the pictorial embodiment of patriotism and capitalism and apple pie. The new logo is clearly an Islamo-fascist plot to undermine America through graphic design. The problem with this theory is that the new logo was actually commissioned the year before Obama was elected, when noted Islamo-fascist George W. Bush was still president. When Mr. Gaffney learned that, he retracted the Missile Defense Agency conspiracy theory. All the better to start working on his Elena Kagan in a turban conspiracy. Elena Kagan's nomination was supposed to be the big political fight of the summer, the battle royale of 2010. Instead, it is inevitable confirmation and Jeff Sessions' substance-free whining and Frank Gaffney raving conspiratorially from the sidelines about the dreaded Muslims. What happened here? Joining us now is Dahlia Lithwick, senior editor and legal correspondent for Slate magazine. Dahlia, it's great to see you again. Thank you for not finding a stunt turban for this segment. It's okay.
I didn't even know they make stunt turbans.
They do, only in Photoshop at the Washington Times. But what did happen here? Did other politics crowd out the big expected fight here? Was Elena Kagan just not the nominee to fight over? What happened?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think, for one thing, someone quipped to me very early in the summer that unless Elena Kagan started gushing, thousands of barrels of oil from her head a day, she was just never going to be an A1 story. This summer, there was just too much else going on that was really riveting. And then I think your second point is really more almost to the point, which is we've constructed a confirmation system that rewards people who are utterly uninteresting. And so she really, I think, did a very, very good job of creating an entire career for herself that made absolutely certain there was going to be no scandal, no smoking gun, nothing of any note or interest. And so beyond the invented turban stories, there was just nothing to ferret out. And so there was really never going to be a gotcha moment. And as soon as there was no gotcha moment, America sort of yawned and turned the channel.
And that may be a sad story for people who make money on the amount of ink that is used in headlines, because there's not going to be any 3-inch headlines about this. But it's also a sad story for the right-wing cottage industry of groups that focus just on judges, that exist solely to both move the courts to the right and to raise a lot of money for conservative causes by doing that. That cottage industry exists because they've been successful, even with this nomination process, in the past. Why isn't it working anymore?
Well, again, in part because I don't think they ever got any traction with any of the various narratives they tried to trot out. The Thurgood Marshall is bad, therefore Kagan is bad Marshall narrative kind of died on the first day of the hearings after opening statements. The Kagan hates the military narrative, which was at some point became clear was the only game they had left to go. Still, I think nobody really believed that her military recruiting policy at Harvard reflected this deep-seated animosity towards our men and women in uniform. So what they were left with was crazy stuff. It was turban stuff. It was NRA. She once said, I'm not sympathetic to that. And so for not being an empathetic person, she's now condemned by the NRA. It's batty. And so I think they sort of tried to cycle through various iterations of things that make you terrified about Kagan, and nobody felt terrified. So I think you're quite right. At the end of the day, you have a nominee who just utterly slid under the radar. And I don't know how the fundraising went, but I know that the narrative was, she's fine, yawn, she's fine.
Yeah. Well, should liberals look back at this experience? We're not out of it yet, but should they essentially look back at this experience and say, an actual liberal, a more liberal justice could have gotten through here?
I think so. It seems to me that to the extent that Obama had a moment to put someone a little bit more, a little closer to a Stevens legacy or a Brennan legacy, a little closer to a passionate firebrand, this would have been the moment to put them up. If the rumors are, and they're only rumors, true that Ginsburg is going to leave while Obama's still in office, I don't think Obama's going to have the maneuvering room to put someone to the left of Elena Kagan up next time.
Dahlia Lithwick, senior editor and legal correspondent for Slate magazine. Thanks a lot for being here tonight, Dahlia. Good to see you.
Thanks, Rachel.